The day I decided to leave, there was a small gathering in the office. Supposedly, it was a farewell party organized by my colleagues. But amidst the forced cheerfulness, Joan, the intern who had started at the company around the same time as me, looked completely stunned. Her eyes were wide with confusion, almost like she was accusing me silently. "Why are you suddenly quitting?" she whispered, barely loud enough to be heard over the quiet chatter. "You took credit for my work before and I let it slide." Say. Her words, wrapped in a false sense of friendship, rubbed me the wrong way. Without saying a word, I brushed past her, a dismissive gesture that clearly surprised everyone nearby. I grabbed my bag from my desk and walked out, the weight of everything unfair that had happened pressing down on me like a heavy coat. It felt like a lifetime ago when Joan and I had both started our internships together, two hopeful newcomers competing for a permanent spot at the company. I had been driven, desperate even, to make an impression. I spent countless nights crafting what I thought was the perfect proposal, a detailed, well-researched plan designed to impress the higher-ups. But then came the gut punch. Joan submitted an almost identical proposal just moments before I could. The fallout was brutal. I was branded a plagiarist, someone who stole ideas from others. People avoided me, whispered behind my back, and soon I felt utterly alone. Things escalated to something terrifying when one of Joan's admirers, someone clearly obsessed with her, deliberately ran me over with his car. The next thing I knew, I woke up disoriented, only to find myself back in the office. The date on my computer screen confirmed it. This was the very same day I had submitted my proposal. The day everything fell apart. Joan sat at the desk beside mine, glowing under the supervisor's praise. She smiled shyly as he said, "Joan, your proposal is excellent. You've considered the market aspects thoroughly. It's practically flawless. Everyone should learn from it." Hearing those words sent a chill through me. I looked around the familiar office space, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows. It was undeniably the same day, the same moment before my future had collapsed. Joan added softly, still basking in the attention, "I even did field research to verify the feasibility." Jack, a loud and opinionated colleague, eagerly jumped in to support her. "Yeah, I bumped into Joan at our store over the weekend. Even on weekends, she's gathering data." My eyes stayed glued to the screen showing Joan's proposal. Every single word, every detail. It was exactly like the plan I had worked on alone, never sharing my thoughts with anyone. How was this possible? My mind raced back to what had happened before. The pain, the betrayal, the hit and run. And now, here I was again, standing at the edge of the same nightmare. The supervisor turned to me. "Lisa," he said, his tone expectant, "it's your turn to showcase your work, but I haven't received your plan since this morning. Did you finish it?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him that my plan was just as good, no better than Joan's. That it was my idea first. My fingers tightened around the hard drive in my pocket, my stomach twisting with confusion and dread. How could I explain how similar our proposals were? How could I make him understand that history was about to repeat itself? Except this time I still had a chance to change things. This time I hadn't submitted my proposal yet. A wave of grim determination washed over me. I wouldn't let the past dictate my future. Lowering my head, I gave a carefully crafted response. "Sorry, supervisor," I mumbled, feigning insecurity. "I'm still getting used to the work, so I didn't finish on time." His face darkened with disappointment. He slammed his phone down on the desk, the sound cutting through the silence. "The company isn't here to support slackers," he snapped. "You and Joan will work together from now on. She can over-deliver, but you can't even meet basic expectations. There are limited positions, so make the most of it." I kept my gaze fixed on the floor, absorbing his words without protest. Jack, ever the loyal follower, seized the moment. "There's the difference between people right there," he sneered, shooting me a smug look. Joan gave him a subtle nudge and offered a saccharine smile. "That's because of your great teaching," she said sweetly. Watching their little performance, a bitter laugh echoed inside my head. In the previous timeline, when our identical plans were discovered, I had fought desperately to clear my name. I presented all the groundwork I'd done, hoping to prove that my work was original. Just when I thought Joan might be cornered, she produced evidence of her own, and Jack backed her up completely. As a senior staff member known for his intelligence and supposed fairness, his support instantly painted me as the guilty party. Unable to prove otherwise, I watched helplessly as my colleagues whispered accusations behind my back. Haven't seen someone outright steal another person's work in ages. Better keep my distance. People like that should be fired. I remember feeling trapped, the walls closing in. And Joan. She burst into tears, accusing me of stealing her hard work, her performance almost theatrical. Furious and defeated, I stormed out of the office, only to be followed by Jack, who demanded I apologize immediately. When I refused, he attacked me in the parking lot. Only later did I realize how dangerously obsessed he was with Joan. But this time things would be different. This time, I wasn't just trying to prove my innocence. This time they would face consequences. As the meeting ended and people began leaving the office, Joan approached my desk. She reached out and touched my arm gently. "Lisa, don't worry," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I know you're capable. Something must have held you up from finishing." She smiled playfully. "You'll do your best too. I hope we both stay at the company." Her overly cute act made me feel sick. Back at my desk, I ignored the remaining co-workers and focused on the question that haunted me. How had Joan gotten hold of my plan? Aside from the possibility that she snuck a peek when the office was empty, I couldn't figure out how she had such detailed knowledge of my work. Had she followed me home? Broken into my apartment while I slept? That seemed too dramatic, like something out of a bad thriller. Still, the fact remained. Our proposals were nearly identical. Determined to find answers, I requested access to the office security footage after hours, claiming I had lost a personal item. I watched the recordings from the day I started working on my proposal, scanning each frame for any interaction between Joan and my workspace. First, there was nothing. Neither Joan nor Jack approached my desk or touched my belongings. But then, as the timeline progressed to the day before submission, the camera feed abruptly cut out. The screen went black. "What happened here?" I asked the security team, pointing at the interruption. "The camera in your area broke," one of them explained matter-of-factly. "We've scheduled repairs for tomorrow." The timing felt too convenient. Could it be that Joan had taken advantage of the malfunctioning camera to sneak a peek at my proposal? While there was no concrete proof, a deep unease settled over me. From that point on, caution became my priority. The next day, a new team task was assigned, and I resolved to protect my work meticulously. Every time I left my desk, even briefly, I locked my computer screen. After work, I copied all completed documents onto an external hard drive and took it home, permanently deleting everything from my computer. This way, Joan wouldn't have another chance to steal my ideas. The day before the deadline, Joan approached again, her expression a strange mix of concern and urgency. "Lisa, how's it going?" she asked, her voice slightly higher than usual. "Need any help? We can't delay this time, or the supervisor will talk to you again." Instinctively, I minimized the document on my screen and met her gaze defensively. "Almost done," I replied curtly. "Wrapping it up soon." She persisted, her eyes lingering on my screen. "Want me to take a look?" Startled, I quickly refused. "No thanks," I shot back, adding a question of my own. "How about you? How's yours coming along?" Joan responded with unsettling confidence. "I'm almost finished too. I've come up with an amazing idea this time." As she described it, a chilling realization hit me. Her amazing idea was the core concept of my proposal, the innovative solution I had worked so hard to develop. How could she possibly know? Blood drained from my face. Her words faded into background noise as I sank deeper into disbelief and despair. Lisa, what's up? You think my idea is great too, right?" Joan beamed at me, her smile almost blinding in its artificiality. I managed a weak yeah to my lips. Good luck, Lisa, she said, turning to leave. I'm heading back. Once she was gone, I reopened my document. The words on the screen now mocked me. The joy I once felt in my work was gone, replaced by a gnawing sense of violation. After a few moments of agonizing contemplation, I made a drastic decision. I deleted everything. Days of effort vanished in an instant. The proposal was due tomorrow, and with no time for another detailed draft, I had no choice but to start fresh, to create something entirely new. Working late into the night, fueled by anxiety and determination, I finally finished a revised proposal just before midnight. To prevent any further interference, I emailed it directly to the supervisor. Despite the late hour, I somehow managed to get a surprisingly refreshing sleep. The next morning, I headed to work with a renewed sense of purpose. A fragile optimism fluttered in my chest. But as soon as I stepped into the office, I noticed the atmosphere had changed. Hushed whispers followed me as I walked toward my desk. Did you hear? Lisa didn't finish her task again, and she even passed someone else's work as her own. I heard the supervisor was fuming this morning. They said it was Joan's work she stole. She even emailed it overnight just to fake it as hers. We better steer clear of folks like her. What do I do? She sits right next to me. Can I apply for a seat change? Each snippet of conversation struck me like a physical blow. Then the supervisor called me into his office. When I walked in, Joan was already there. Her eyes red and swollen, her expression devastated. The supervisor sat down, his gaze steady and unflinching. With just the three of us here, he said. Lisa, tell the truth, did you use Joan's proposal? The question hit me like a cold splash of water. So this is how it was going to end up. Despite all my precautions, I still found myself tangled in the same web of accusations. Where had I gone wrong? Joan turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Lisa, I've always been nice to you. Never gave you a hard time. Why would you do this to me? If I hadn't stayed up late finishing my proposal and sent it directly to the supervisor, I wouldn't have had a single shred of defense. If we both want a promotion, she continued, her voice trembling, we can compete fairly. Why stoop to such underhanded tactics? What's stolen will never truly be yours. Her words came pouring out, drowning any chance I had to explain myself. She was playing the victim perfectly. The way she cried, the way she framed the accusation, it was all part of an act so convincing that even the supervisor seemed moved. He pulled up our proposals on the screen. Side by side they were nearly identical except for the names. A grim amusement flickered inside me at the sheer audacity of it all. Joan might have somehow accessed my original plan, but surely she couldn't have copied the new version I'd worked on just last night. I pointed to a specific section. Joan, I asked calmly despite the storm brewing inside me, how did you analyze this particular dataset? I expected her to hesitate, to stumble over the explanation. Instead, she laid out the entire process exactly as I had envisioned it. Her words mirroring my own thoughts with eerie precision. Then, with a glance that looked almost shy, Joan turned back to the supervisor. Enough, he said finally, his voice heavy with disappointment. Lisa, I brought you here hoping you'd admit to whatever wrongdoing so I could give you another chance. But you show no remorse, no willingness to take responsibility. He sighed. The gap between your interview performance and now is huge. I think it's time to seriously reconsider your position here. As he stood up, clearly frustrated, his attention shifted sharply to Joan. And you, Joan. Your last proposal was impressive, but this one is a mess, full of inconsistencies. Even the basic framework is flawed. Joan looked up at the screen, shock spreading across her face. After Joan left the office the previous evening, I had deleted my original proposal, the one she had so easily copied, and created a deliberately flawed version full of errors. My intention was to test a theory. Would she copy not just my ideas but my mistakes too? Today's events confirmed it. She didn't just steal from me. She mimicked every move I made, as if she had access to my very thoughts. With someone like that around, there was no way I could ever feel safe producing anything truly original. As the supervisor continued speaking, I reached up and unclipped my company badge. The plastic felt cool against my fingers. I tossed it onto the desk, the soft clatter echoing in the tense silence. I have nothing more to say, I stated firmly. What I create is mine. I don't need to claim someone else's work to prove myself. I'm resigning. I'll draft the letter soon. Please approve it promptly. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out. I was tired of fighting for a place where my efforts were exploited, where my creativity was met with theft and deceit. I was done with this whole charade. But just as I reached the outer office, Joan came running after me, her footsteps echoing on the linoleum floor. She positioned herself right in front of me, arms stretched out dramatically. I simply ignored her, stepping aside and continuing toward the exit. She was relentless. "Lisa, you're just mad, right?" she called after me. "I'll talk to the manager. I won't hold it against you for taking my proposal. We were supposed to stick together, stay at the company. Remember, the evaluation is just around the corner." Her desperate pleas grated on my last nerve. I spun around and slapped her, hard. The sharp crack of my hand against her cheek cut through the tension like a blade. There was a stunned silence. Joan's hair fell across her face, hiding her reaction, but I could imagine it well enough. We had definitely made a scene. Several colleagues, pretending to be absorbed in their work, were clearly watching with rapt attention. "What did you do to Joan?" Jack shouted, rushing toward us and shoving me roughly aside. He immediately turned his attention to her, concern etched on his face. "Joan, are you okay? Let me see your face." She instinctively flinched from his touch, then realizing it was Jack, her expression softened. "I am fine," she mumbled. "Apologize to Joan now," Jack growled at me, his eyes blazing with a possessive fury that bordered on madness. The memory of him deliberately running me over in the previous timeline flashed vividly in my mind, a chilling reminder of his volatility. To avoid provoking him further, I offered a hollow apology. "Sorry," I muttered, feigning regret. "I got a bit emotional." Forcing a strange smile, Joan stepped forward. "No worries, but Lisa, please don't leave. I didn't mean to tell the manager. Stay, will you? Maybe you'll pass the evaluation and get to stay." I suspected her pleas were less about my well-being and more about losing access to my ideas. Only a fool would stay in such a toxic environment. But outwardly, I played along, faking distress as I took her hand. "To be honest," I said, my voice laced with false resignation, "staying here probably isn't in the cards for me anyway. Better to leave now than be forced out later." Then a sudden thought struck me. "Oh, by the way," I added, a sugary smile creeping onto my lips, "isn't Nick interested in you? You two would make a cute couple. I genuinely wish you both the best. Just remember to invite me to the wedding." My words seemed to please Jack. He nervously touched his thinning hair and let out a self-satisfied chuckle. "Yeah, Joan, as long as you're here. Who cares if Lisa leaves?" Hearing his dismissive remark and noticing the curious glances of our colleagues, Joan suddenly distanced herself from Jack, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. She started to protest, then seemed to change her mind and said nothing. Seeing that Jack had calmed down, I took that as my cue to escape, leaving the mess behind me. Soon enough, I completed the necessary exit paperwork. A feeling of liberation bubbled inside me. I hummed a cheerful tune as I packed the rest of my belongings. As I walked out of the company building, I glanced back toward Joan's empty desk. A fleeting thought crossed my mind. Who would she try to copy next now that I was gone? I loaded my things into the car and drove home, the familiar streets of my neighborhood a welcome sight after the stress of the office. Usually, my cat greeted me with an enthusiastic rush to the door. But this time it stayed aloof, observing me from a distance. When I tried to pet it, it hissed sharply, its fur bristling. Perhaps it sensed something unfamiliar clinging to my clothes, the lingering residue of the day's unpleasantness. When my father arrived home later that evening, he found me lounging on the couch with a facial mask on, legs crossed comfortably as I watched TV. He looked slightly puzzled. "Is something up at work today? Why are you home so early?" I shrugged nonchalantly. "I quit." My father burst into laughter, a hearty sound that filled the living room. "I told you I could just give you a position, but no, you insisted on starting at the bottom. And now you quit on your own." Honestly, the truth was that the company where I interned was actually one of our family's subsidiaries. Back when I graduated, my father had offered me a comfortable role within the family business, but I had stubbornly refused. I wanted to work my way up the corporate ladder on my own merits, as a personal challenge like leveling up in a game. So I applied to this company and got hired based on my own skills, or so I believed. Little did I know how things would unfold. I munched on sunflower seeds as I recounted the day's events to my father, explaining the strange occurrences and my final decision to resign. He listened intently, his brow furrowed with concern. He, too, sensed something was off and promised to discreetly look into the matter. With my newfound freedom, I indulged in travel, exploring new cities and immersing myself in different cultures. The distance and fresh perspectives gradually dulled the sharp edges of past frustrations. Though I no longer worked at the company, maintaining connections within its ranks proved surprisingly easy thanks to my family ties. As I had suspected, Joan's performance plummeted after I left. Without my ideas to draw from, she struggled to produce meaningful proposals or achieve any real results. At times, she even faltered on the simplest tasks. Thanks to Jack's misguided support, she managed to avoid outright dismissal, but the brilliance she once displayed vanished completely. While I was still trying to understand the exact nature of Joan's uncanny ability to replicate my ideas, we received an unexpected visitor at home. "Dad, who is this?" I asked, puzzled as I looked at the man in sunglasses standing in our living room. My father introduced him. "This is Bob. I had him check me out before, and after following his suggestions, I felt much better physically. You mentioned those incidents at work, so I thought something was off. I had Bob come over to check things out for you." Bob didn't fit the typical image of someone with expertise in esoteric matters. He looked younger than his stated age and carried himself with a casual demeanor that belied any air of mysticism. Sensing my skepticism, he removed his sunglasses and asked, "Have you been feeling unusually tired lately?" Paused thinking. Yes, I had been feeling a persistent fatigue, one that went beyond the usual exhaustion of a demanding job. At the time, I attributed it to late nights and stress, dismissing it as temporary. But now, looking at Bob, a seed of doubt began to sprout in my mind. "Yeah," I replied slowly. "Especially in my shoulders, they're sore." Bob nodded knowingly. "There's something unclean attached to you. You're feeling tired because someone put a curse on you. That person can enter your body through this curse. It's like they're sharing your soul, and that's why you feel exhausted." A shiver ran down my spine. Before I could ask for clarification, Bob continued, his voice turning serious. "This is just the beginning. If it's not lifted in time, your soul will start to fade. Eventually you'll lose control of your body. By then you won't be the real you anymore. Someone wants to replace you." The implications of his words were chillingly clear. I didn't need to think long about who might be behind such a malicious act. I had initially believed Joan's motivation was simply to steal my work and advance her career. But Bob's pronouncement suggested something far more sinister. She wanted to take over my very being, to erase me and assume my life. All her seemingly friendly gestures after joining the company now appeared in a disturbing new light. It was clear now. Joan had never been my friend. Every smile, every comforting word, every act of kindness had been a calculated ploy to get close to me, to gain access not just to my work, but to my very life. The realization sent a chill through me. I had trusted her once, even considered her a companion during those early days at the company. And all along she had been using me. My father looked deeply concerned as he turned to Bob. "Is there a way to fix this?" he asked, his voice tight with worry. Bob nodded confidently. "Of course," he said, pulling a small white pill from his pocket. "As long as the person who cursed you takes this, the curse will break." I stared at the tiny tablet in his hand, turning it over in my mind. A plan began to form, one that didn't involve confrontation or accusations. If I wanted Joan to take this pill without suspicion, I would need someone she trusted, or at least someone she wouldn't immediately question. And the perfect candidate came to mind, Jack. The next day, I arranged to meet him near the company building around noon. As expected, he showed up right on time, curiosity and unease written all over his face. I held out the pill. "If you can get Joan to take this," I said carefully, "she'll fall in love with you soon. You'll finally have the girl of your dreams." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Really? Why are you helping me?" I gave him a sad, thoughtful look. "I'm not really doing it for you," I admitted. After leaving the company, I felt bad about fighting with Joan. She was my best friend there. "Jack, I can see you're a good guy. If Joan ends up happy with you, then I'll be happy too." He bought it completely. Blinded by his obsession, he took the pill without hesitation, promising he'd make sure Joan swallowed it. Knowing how far he'd go for her, I had no doubt he'd follow through. Within days I started to feel different. The constant fatigue that had clung to me like a second skin began to fade. My shoulders no longer ached. Even my cat, who had been avoiding me for weeks, returned to curling up on my lap like old times. Something had definitely shifted. I sent Jack a quick message to confirm. "Did you get Joan to take the pill?" His reply came fast. "Yeah, thankfully it could be crushed and dissolved in water. Otherwise, I don't know how I would have done it. But I don't think it worked yet." I replied with reassurance. "The effects aren't immediate. Give it some time." Once I was certain Joan had taken the pill, I allowed myself a quiet chuckle, not out of cruelty but relief. The curse was broken. The danger had passed. But I wasn't quite done with Joan yet. To see how things played out firsthand, I decided to return to the company under a slightly altered identity. A simple role, low-key and unnoticed, at least at first. The day I walked back into the office, the manager and Jack were stunned. Their jaws practically hit the floor when they saw me. Only Joan's expression remained unreadable, her face stiff, her jaw clenched so tightly I thought she might crack a tooth. The co-workers who had once whispered behind my back now avoided eye contact, suddenly aware of how harsh their words had been. "Lisa, how did she suddenly become the chairman's daughter?" someone muttered nervously. "I don't know. Do you think she'll hold a grudge? She wasn't wrong either. She did use Joan's proposal." "Shoo, keep it down." I ignored them and made my way to my new office. Joan approached me almost immediately. Her voice strained as she grabbed my arm. "I never imagined your real identity," she said, forcing a smile. "I'll have to depend on you now." The manager gave her a knowing glance, clearly unimpressed by her sudden shift in behavior. Bypassing her superiors to cozy up to the boss's daughter wasn't exactly subtle. From that point on, Joan found herself buried in difficult tasks. Without my ideas to copy, her inefficiency became glaringly obvious. Supervisors grew impatient. Even Jack's desperate attempts to shield her couldn't save her performance. The evaluation for permanent positions arrived quickly. Joan's submission failed to meet the standards. After a brief deliberation, the results were clear: she hadn't passed. When the news was announced, Joan trembled visibly. Her composure shattered like glass. She lunged at me, eyes wild with accusation. Did you abuse your power to keep me from passing? Why come back after quitting? Tell me where I went wrong." I pulled her away gently, watching her unravel with a strange sense of detachment. "If you think your work is so good," I said calmly, "we can show everyone. Stop accusing me of bias. You copied my proposal just fine, didn't you? You know exactly what you did, don't you?" My words hit something deep inside her. Her face paled. She suddenly clutched her head and collapsed to the floor. My head hurts, she moaned. You know everything, you know everything. When did you find out? No wonder I can't get into your body anymore. She looked up at me, eyes wide and frantic. Why is it that you were born into privilege while I had to climb step by step? If you hadn't quit suddenly, I would have passed the evaluation. She scrambled to her feet, muttering under her breath. I'm going to find the master. Your identity, your life, it will all be mine. Oh, mine. No one can stop me. Jack rushed over, trying to calm her down. Joan, what's wrong? Calm down. Then he turned to me, anger flashing in his eyes. What did you do to her? Is this because of that pill you tricked me with? At his outburst, I signaled discreetly to the bodyguards I had stationed nearby. I wasn't taking any chances. Not again. What pill? Joan suddenly snapped, her gaze locking onto Jack. He hesitated, then blurted out. She gave it to me. She said it would make you fall in love with me, so I gave it to you. Hearing that, Joan's entire demeanor changed, from manic to murderous. She grabbed Jack by the throat, her fingers tightening with fury. So it was you, she hissed. You ruined my plan. I was so close to succeeding. According to the plan, in a matter of time, I would escape this life and be free from your pathetic infatuation. Her voice dripped with venom. Love you. Stop dreaming. Look at yourself. Do you really think you deserve me? Seeing you makes me sick. I only had to stick around you and pretend to like your gestures just to get Lisa's help. I was ready to vomit every time. Jack, who had seemed momentarily remorseful, crumbled under her words. Do you not like me at all? He whispered. Never, she spat. For a moment, Jack let her choke him. His head bowed in silence. Then, in a shocking blur of motion, he yanked a small folding knife from his pocket and stabbed Joan repeatedly. The blade flashed under the fluorescent lights. Blood splattered across his face as he continued his frenzied attack. Then just die, 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 he screamed. People around us shrieked and scattered, horror dawning on their faces. Joan collapsed to the floor, crimson pooling around her. I immediately ordered the bodyguards to restrain Jack. They tackled him to the ground, pinning his arms behind his back as he muttered incoherently. How can you not like me? How? The police and ambulances arrived swiftly, restoring a semblance of order to the chaos. Joan was pronounced dead at the scene. Jack was charged with intentional murder and sentenced to life in prison. The mysterious figure known as the Master, the one who had taught Joan how to cast the curse, was also arrested for promoting dangerous and manipulative practices. With the nightmare finally behind me, my father and I visited Bob to thank him properly, with a generous gift and heartfelt gratitude. This time I listened to my father's advice. I joined the family business, staying under his guidance to avoid ever falling victim to such treachery again. Looking back, it was more than just a battle for credit or justice. It was a fight for my very identity, and I won. But I'll never forget the cold truth I learned along the way. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones plotting your downfall.